Welcome back. You're watching World Talks, and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. Dozens of irregularities found, billions of zlotys lost due to misguided investments and unjustified expenditures, among other things. These were the findings of audits carried out by external companies investigating losses at Polish state-owned companies. To take a deeper dive into the subject, we invited Jakub Kocjan, board member at the Akcja Demokracja NGO, and here's with me now to talk about this subject. Thank you so much for joining me here on the program.
Good morning. Thank you very much for the invitation.
So could you tell us what were the actual findings from the Minister of State Assets? Based on the reported audits, we know that there could be potential legal ramifications of deliberate and systemic irregularities. So what did these entail?
Oh, I'm sure that there will be a lot of legal consequences because there is nearly 50 notifications to the prosecutor's office about alleged crimes, and also 95 persons were not given the vote of approval inside the state-owned companies. And all of this is the result of the audit which was conducted by the external companies, so it is politically independent, over the good, or in this case bad governance in the state-owned companies over last years. There is a lot of findings, and we can divide them into three groups, I believe. First is about all these big investments. The minister yesterday said about megalomania of these investments, like in Police, in Puławy, in Płock, the company Orlen had a really big investment in Płock, and all of them have something in common. So the irregularities led to paying much more for all of them and big delays over them. The worst
the delays
example,
over the delivery?
They are still not delivered, and it is not real for now what will be the time of opening of delivery because of many irregularities during the investment, but also in planning of them. And the worst example here is, of course, Ostrołęka C, so the power station, which cost 3 billion zlotys, and the construction of that was stopped because it had not economic economic reason for building that. So even this, the same people decided to stop it after many years of criticism.
So
but
the money was
paid,
but the final product was not delivered.
It was not delivered, and every one of us is paying for that and for the incompetence of these people. So it's one thing. The second thing is the money which were in public money which were used in improper way. It is mostly connected to, for example, sponsoring agreements, but also some extra agreements with the managers, with the boards, like totally unnecessary agreements with the ban of the competence after working in the positions where there was no economic reason, again, for doing something like that. And it is not a coincidence, for example, that there was a lot of cases of getting money or transferring money to, for example, right-wing media or right-wing NGOs, but in practice they were not so much non-governmental ones. So it
they
is
stood
the second
in stark
category.
contradiction.
Yes, and it was a big problem in many companies because Orlen company, so the company which is responsible for petrol stations, for example, is the most known case. But in the audit, in the report, there is also a PGE company, Azoty Puławy, also industrial big company, Enea, so whole energetic sector, which is energetic industry, which should serve for the economic and energetic safety in Poland, not for the interests of one particular party or one particular company.
Especially now during this very volatile time on the continent, when the war is being, waged against Ukraine, and it's increasing prices of energy.
Poland has one of the worst situation when it comes to the prices of energy, of power in European Union, and especially in this context, we cannot afford to do such things. Apart from that, it is clearly illegal. And the third category, which is also important, it was mostly an ENEA case. It was more than 10 events, rallies in practice, which were in practice the rallies of Law and Justice Party. So the money of all taxpayers were spent for the events promoting, not directly sometimes, but the politicians of one particular party just before election. So it was, of course, the third very serious irregularity.
So we're looking at all these, but how does the corporate governance law actually currently addresses those sort of unjustified expenditures and failures to deliver? Are there any gaps in law that could make it possible for these to take place?
Yeah, so of course, all of these improper behaviors are already described in the codes, in the laws, but there are some problems, like some loopholes, some gaps, which are not even about this more explicit cases, like sponsoring particular events. But for example, sometimes it's difficult to assess what is economically reasonable when it comes to agreement with the manager after the time when he is or she is leaving the company. So for how many months should he or she be paid for not competing? Of course, in these cases, it is quite visible. For example, there were state-owned companies like Azoty, which had economic loss, and it was not the 1 month or 1 quarter, but it was like 3-4 quarters at row, and still they were sponsoring more events. Still they were, for example, preparing these agreements with their managers, with their boards to this non-competing agreements. So especially when it happened just after the election on 15th October 2023, it is very visible that it had a political context, but it is really good that the Ministry of State Assets prepared 2 big changes regarding that, also for the future, not regarding this particular irregularities. It is already in the prosecutor's office, and it will be the work of prosecutor's office to deal with that, but also for the future to be even more specific when it comes to these particular behaviors, and there will be new code of good practices when it comes to governing public domain, and also some amendments to close these gaps when it comes to the already existing law on public governance.
We heard from Minister Jakub Kocjan, who mentioned that some irregularities bear marks of corruption, but then we need to consider the other side, because there were voices from the other side. Law and Justice Deputy Marek Suski, representative of the former government, described the reports of irregularities as what he said was political struggle. What's your comment on that? Because obviously there is an opposition to what's been portrayed by the findings.
My comment here is clear. So if there are irregularities and you want to discuss them, you have to talk about these irregularities, about the policy of these particular groups. Yet saying only that it is political battle. Yeah, we are in politics, but the why we are living in democracy in order to control every power and every government. So it
and
is
to have an outlook
natural
on the actions which are being taken in order to sustain.
Yes, so it is clear that the next government is going to perform audit. The former government of Law and Justice also performed some audits and reports when they came into power, but the result was that they have found nothing in order to prosecute these things. Here we have really concrete, specific cases, nearly 50 cases, so for everyone, for separate, particular big proceeding by prosecutor's office, and these cases really affected the life of everyone. We remember, for example, just before the election in October 23, there was no fuel on the petrol stations, yeah, and it was not a coincidence. It was that, for example, Daniel Obajtek, the president of the board of Orlen, probably, according to these findings, it was the policy which was not economically reasonable, because in free market economy it should be the play of supply and demand which decides over the price of petrol fuel in this case. And it was probably the political intrigue in order to lower the prices just before the election. So it was totally not justified by the free market, as we should live.
Very shortly, because our time is coming to an end, but where do we go from here? So we have the findings, we have 50 cases. What happens next?
The prosecutor's office is already preparing, yes, to conduct proceedings over every one of them. They will be probably proceeded separately, and I hope that the prosecutor's office is prepared and is going to press charges against the people who are responsible for that. Also to show example for every political party, not only this one, but every political party and government now and in the future, to not go this way.
Ruling by example, showing what could be the possible consequences if you break the law, basically.
Prison. All of these cases are so serious that in nearly all of these cases it is possible to go to the prison even, or and it is not in opposition to that, that for example in Orlen case it is already ongoing process. In December there is a meeting inside Orlen about that these people need to reimburse the some money, and I hope as a taxpayer also that they will pay for everything they did, not we as the whole society.
Thank you so much. Jakub Kocjan, board member of Akcja Demokracja NGO. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. And so this would be all for now here on World Talks, but please do stay tuned because we have some of the latest headlines coming in just a moment.